Welcome to With the First Pick. It's where you come to for your breaking news. It turns out I'm Ryan Wilson. That's former Titans GM Ran Carthon. And we're not talking about the draft right yet. We'll get to it at some point. But right now, Ran, Dillon Gabriel has been named the starting quarterback officially by Kevin Stefanski. I'll get your initial thoughts, and then we'll hear Kevin Stefanski confirm it so we all know it together.
I mean, we kind of felt like this was coming or it needed to happen just so they could see what their future is, right? We've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, whether on this podcast or numerous other shows on the network, that at some point you had to turn the keys over, whether it was to Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, just to see what you have and allow you to kind of make your plan for the future, sitting on 2 first-round draft picks for next year.
Yep, that sounds right. All right, producer Stryker, let's hear Kevin Stefanski just moments ago talking about the decision.
Obviously, from the second he's been here, he's been working very hard, very intelligent young man. He's done a nice job throughout practice. And, you know, he's been this whole season, he's been learning how to get yourself ready and understand the rhythm of an NFL week and what that looks like as a backup. And obviously now feel like he's ready to go in as a starter.
Do you need to simplify things for him this week or change anything offensively?
I think with any quarterback, you're going to play to their strengths. So regardless of who that guy is, veteran, rookie, you name it, you got to play to their strengths. I'm sorry?
Why now?
Yeah, just my decision where I felt this decision was best for the football team.
Joe slide into the number 2 role?
Yes.
Why did you decide to make Joe the backup and not Shedeur?
Yeah, Joe's the backup.
All right, so that last question, we'll start there, and then we'll circle back to Dillon because there's plenty of time to talk about all that stuff. But Kevin was asked a couple times, is Joe Flacco or Shedeur Sanders to back up? The answer was Joe. Why? My decision. Joe's to back up. And you've been in situations, Ran, and I'll ask you a couple of questions. As the GM, where you and your head coach have made decisions about the starting quarterback, whether it's a young guy or a veteran. Kevin said it was his decision, and each team is different. But is that a conversation you have with the GM or you have with the ownership, especially when you're talking about bringing in a rookie, not necessarily first-round pick in this case, but replacing a veteran?
I think anytime you're making a decision to switch around the order of the quarterbacks, that's a conversation that's had with ownership, with the GM. Now, contractually, Kevin Stefanski may have total control over the game day roster. Right? Because that's a part that we don't talk about on this show and on these platforms is contractually Andrew Berry could be in charge of free agency. He could be in charge of the draft. He could be in charge of the final roster, right? But then also contractually, Kevin Stefanski could be in charge of the game day roster. And so it's up to him to make those decisions. But you don't make those decisions in a vacuum or in a silo. You make those decisions as an organization. For what's the benefit of the football team, what's going to give you the best chance to win on Sunday. So I'm pretty sure this was a conversation that was had between, Jimmy Haslam, D. Haslam, Andrew Berry, Paul DePodesta, J.W. Johnson, who's also a part of the ownership group. And so I'm pretty sure all those people were brought in to this conversation before the decision was made.
So if you're listening, producer Stryker put up a very gross comes to mind graphic. Most consecutive games with an interception for the Browns. Tim Couch leads the way with 12, followed by Brian Sipe. Shout out to Brian Sipe. Then Joe Flacco's there at 10. Derek Anderson, Charlie Fry round out the list. And just a reminder, stark reminder that the quarterback situation has been unresolved for many, 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 many years prior to them leaving for Baltimore. So the Shedeur Sanders question, let's address that, because we've seen situations where veterans have been named the starter in years past at different organizations, and they lose their job at some point in the season, and they go from number 1 to number 3. You elevate a young guy to number 2, and there are various reasons for this. Why do you think, you can speculate or tell me what you would do with Shedeur Sanders, who still remains the number 3?
It's kind of like the Giants situation. When they chose to go with Jackson Dart, they made Russell Wilson the number 2 and left Jameis as the number 3. That's just kind of how things were, because in the snap of a moment, and you knock on wood that nothing happens to Dillon Gabriel, but something may happen to him. The first snap of the game, and you want to put somebody in there that's been ready or that's, that you're more comfortable with. And I think just based off of who they chose to be the week 1 starter and who they've chosen to be the current starter, those are the 2 guys they're most comfortable with. And so I believe that's why they're going with Dillon Gabriel. And again, I mean, we talked about it, and Producer Striker and I, we all talked about it on our group chat last night, that, I mean, it's your first start in London. I don't think it being in London is a bad thing, because you're away from your family, you're away from all the distractions that you have here at home. And I don't know where they're staying. They're probably staying out on the countryside at the Grove. So that's an hour away from downtown London. So you have nothing to do but to lock in on the game plan. The unfortunate part is that you are going against a Brian Flores defense, who we've seen what he's done to backup quarterbacks and inexperienced quarterbacks throughout his career. So that's the unfortunate part. But it's the quickest way to measure him and see where he is, because, at some point you're going to face one of these tough defenses anyway.
And we had this conversation last week about Jackson Dart. Oh, Lord have mercy. Bless his soul. He's got to face the Chargers. They beat the Chargers at home at MetLife Stadium. Now, things are going to get more difficult for him, but it's not insurmountable, and that's why you draft these players to find out. The other thing that I would point to, a couple things, I was, as a Steelers fan, I was pleasantly surprised with how they managed that Brian Flores defense last week in Ireland. Now, you have Aaron Rodgers, who's a little bit older than Dillon Gabriel. I mean, you can make the joke that maybe Dillon was a freshman when Aaron was a senior. That's how old Dillon is. But the ball comes out quickly, and Aaron's sort of been around the block a few times. But I do wonder, and tell me what you think about this, because I was texting with a buddy who knows Kevin Stefanski quite well, and he's incredibly fond of Kevin Stefanski as a person, a human being, and as a play caller. And I said, what do you think? How's this relationship with quarterbacks, young or old, in terms of getting the most out of them? Because I think we talk a lot about Kevin O'Connell, and we talk a lot about Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. I think Stefanski deserves to be in the conversation of getting the most out of players, especially the quarterback. And he said he's one of the best at meeting people where they are. So he'll only ask his quarterback to do things that are comfortable for the QB. And then Stefanski will change things in the offense to do what Dillon does well. It's not a my way or the highway situation where, a lot of coaches historically have been that way. What do you think of my theory that Stefanski probably deserves more credit in terms of grooming these quarterbacks? And then how do you think it's going to work out? What this could possibly look like against that Brian Flores defense?
Well, let me answer the second part of your question first. I think it's going to be a lot of quick game, get the ball out quick, and if they're smart, they're going to turn around and hand it off to Quinshawn,
right?
And really get him going and kind of slow that Minnesota front down a little bit. And then I think you're going to see the ball come out quick. You're going to see some outs. You're going to see some slants. Some 3-step, 5-step, some deep balls to make the safeties have to back up to do just for the threat of the deep ball. Now, the first part of your question, I'll say this much, and I'm inexperienced when it comes to Kevin Stefanski's climb through the league, right? I just pick up from Minnesota when he was the offensive coordinator there, and then through his Cleveland Browns tenure. So I'm not going to go out on the limb right now and say that he has the background, so to speak, of a you can't even really put Sean McVay in that category, right? Because as a head coach, he went from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford.
That's fair enough. Yep.
So you can't even put Sean McVay in that category. But Kevin Stefanski, who's had 7 different starters, since he's been the head coach there, but somehow always makes the playoffs. Kyle Shanahan, right, wrong, or indifferent, having gone through multiple quarterbacks, but the product still looks the same.
Right.
I can't put him in that category, but again, that's coming from a standpoint of I don't know Stefanski's prior history before Minnesota.
And you've worked closely with Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. I don't know how closely you know Kevin O'Connell. Obviously, we had Kwesi on the show, so you're certainly tight with Kwesi from your time together in San Francisco. That's okay. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, and I appreciate in the day and age we live in, Ran. I appreciate your honesty. You
hey man,
I don't know.
I'm gonna keep it a buck. I'm gonna keep it a buck always.
Yeah,
if I know, I know. If I don't, I don't. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's what we talked about earlier this week, man. Just holding yourself accountable.
Yeah.
Holding yourself accountable in a day and age when people don't want to do that, or we conveniently forget to hold ourselves accountable. So
yeah, that's right.
it. I'm trying to
And
live right, Ryan. I'm just trying to live right,
it's
brother.
all about the energy we bring. And speaking of holding people accountable, in some sense, it feels like this isn't all on Joe Flacco, but when you look at the numbers, he ranks near the bottom on every offensive category. He's two touchdowns near the bottom, 6 interceptions near the top in a bad way. Everything else has been a struggle. Now, they've had injuries along the offensive line. We've talked about that. But they do have a running game. And one of the things that Stefanski leans into when these teams are successful, and it's so hard to remember because they only won 4 games last year, and they are all the stink that comes with the history of the Cleveland Browns, fair or not. They won 11 games in 2020, Stefanski's first year. I think Andrew's first year as well. They won 11 games in 2023. Both years, Kevin was named Coach of the Year. And one of the things that he leans into is running the football. That's why they drafted Dylan Sampson and drafted Quinshon. Quinshon's been impossible to tackle since he's been on the field. And then play action off of that and all the things that you talked about, getting the ball out quickly. So I think they have a chance to not be terrible. Not so much because Dillon Gabriel is going to be a huge improvement over Joe Flacco. We don't know, but it can't get worse. But I think, tell me about this theory. This team has a chance to be competitive in the AFC North because of the defense. And if you can just avoid shooting yourself in the foot every single series offensively, run the ball, get the ball out quickly, you can win some games and find yourself right in the thick of it come December.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to push back on that because we've talked about it on this show. Like, they have the formula, right? They have the formula. They have a very good defense, which is coordinated by Jim Schwartz. You have a strong run game now that Quinshon's been inserted in the lineup. And so you just have to play mistake-free football. You have to run the football, shorten the game, which keeps the opposing offense off the field, but it allows your defense to rest. And it gives Schwartzy that much more time to kind of make adjustments to whatever the other team's offense is doing. You just got to be efficient running the ball. We look at was this the original graphic, Striker, from a couple weeks ago?
No, this is right now.
Okay, so
All right,
how
read
many
it out
wins
for the listeners, Rand.
So how many wins do the Browns end up with? 2 to 3. I don't know if that's 2 to 3 in the Dillon Gabriel era or just period.
Yeah, they're 1 and 3 right now. Good Lord.
I think
so. 60% said they win 3 games.
I mean, I think it'll be a little bit better than that, personally, just because I know Dillon Gabriel's he's always taking care of the football, whether he was at UCF, Oklahoma, or Oregon. He's always taking pretty good care of the football. He's going to be more athletic than you thought or than you think. But the problem is always going to be his height and the different things they're going to have to do to give him a better sight line. See, the one thing we talk about or I talked about with Kyler Murray had this rare innate ability to find throwing windows with just subtle movements. He'll drop back 3-step, 5-step, 7-step, but then it's a slight move to the right, slight move to the left to get himself in that throwing window where he can see. Right. And there's a scout in the league who's a former quarterback on the shorter side. And he told me, he was like, hey, man, at my height with having a big offensive lineman in front of me, he said, I knew spots where the receivers should be. And he was like, I just saw helmets. And so you wonder if that's going to factor in at some point. But like I said, going all the way back to the top, you knew this move was coming. You knew this move had to happen because not only do you have to have an eye in the future or have a foot in 2025, you got to have eyes and feet into 2026 as well. So my wife is off camera right now walking by. She doesn't know that we're live right now. But it's one of those deals, man, that you knew this had to happen. And now we get to see because where Dillon Gabriel is. Because if you go back to that graphic, Striker, with this draft class, and Ryan, you and I talk about it.
Yep.
If they just hit on one of these quarterbacks, this is a home run A+ draft class. Because so far, Mason Graham, Carson Schwarzenegger, Quinshon Judkins, Harold Fannin, even Dylan Sampson, they've all contributed. And now, if you can get production out of either Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, this is a A++ draft class that I don't think enough people are giving our guy Andrew Berry and his staff, their flowers for.
And here's another thing that we haven't talked about. I don't think we mentioned this young man at all. Aiden Huntington was undrafted. He made the team, and he has been disruptive as a defensive lineman. So even the guys they didn't draft are making impacts. And if the quarterback hits, whichever one it is, A+, even if the quarterbacks don't hit, and, it's going to be less than 50% after you get out of round one anyway with the quarterback success rate, it's an A draft. You are drafting guys that are making impacts right away. Carson Schlesinger has a chance to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, if we're being honest with ourselves. Maybe linebackers don't win it. Harold Fannin Jr. leads the team in receptions. Now, that ain't a great note, but it's great for Harold Fannin Jr. David Njoku's in the last year of his deal. Go ahead.
I mean, let's keep it a buck, right? Let's keep the theme with keeping it a buck going that started on our Ran It Back Monday.
You know it's bad when Stryker hits the boo button because Stryker's the happiest person I know. Go ahead with your conversation.
I mean, let's keep it a buck. This is why you try to exercise patience during the player acquisition, right? This is why you have to exercise patience and allow the full gamut of player acquisition to take hold, right? You can't just be one and done with the draft class, because now after this strong draft class they just had, regardless of how the season ends, if there's some thought or some mind frame of moving on from Andrew Berry and or Kevin Stefanski, then now you're completely negating this strong draft class, because you're going to bring in a new coach that's going to have new ways of doing things. And these, how many ever young men it was, 6 young men that they drafted, may not necessarily fit the new way. Right. When in actuality, they are kicking ass with this current regime. Exercise patience, Browns fans. I know. I know
that's a big ask.
I know. I get it. I get it, and I understand where you guys feel and how you guys feel, where you guys see your quarterback situation. But man, you can't, like Bill Parcells had well, it's not even a Bill Parcells quote. It's kind of just how he lived. If one was wrong, everything is wrong, right? Yeah. So let's not live that way, Browns fans. Because if one thing is wrong right now that you could put your finger on, has been the quarterback position. Yeah. But you have really good players at other spots. You just gotta allow it to come together. Now, yeah, Stryker's on one today.
So Stryker just put up a graphic, if you're listening, of all the quarterbacks, the jersey with all the quarterbacks that have been there since they returned to Cleveland in 1999. Tim Couch is at the top. Our buddy Brady Quinn's on there somewhere. Geez, Bailey Zappi's been added to the bottom. I forgot he was out there. Jameis, of course, was added to the bottom. Flacco the first time. P.J. Walker. And by the way, they won games with P.J. Walker after Deshaun Watson got hurt the first time. So, again, that points to their ability to overcome some obstacles. The other thing is, if they get this quarterback thing right, Ran, they got 2 first-round picks. You can bolster the offensive line if you need to, and they may need to do that. They need wide receivers desperately. You can do that. They'll get some cap space. I don't know if they can bring back David Njoku. That's a conversation for months down the road. But I think, man, I think you're right. They're close. I understand the frustration if you're a fan, because you're just tired of seeing the same old, same old. Hey, Stryker, let's look at the schedule real quick and get some thoughts from Ran about what the future in the near term looks like for Dillon Gabriel and this bunch. Look, I think Carson Wentz is playing again. He didn't look great because they got after him. The Steelers did. And we talk about Brian Flores' defense. Carson Wentz is going to be in for something with Jim Schwartz. That's a different level of defense.
Oh, so yeah, 100%.
That could negate one another, the defensive side of the ball there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule, you got a strong – so you gave Flacco the first quarter. And I'm over here touching the screen because of just the way my brain works. But
report.
you gave Flacco the first quarter of the season. And then now before the bye, Dillon Gabriel will get the second quarter of the season. And so these are, you get the Vikings defense, Steelers defense, which we know is because of the vets today. They've been playing mid, but at any given point they could catch fire, right? Especially with that front and then the opportunistic secondary. The Dolphins, we'll say, is mid at best. With how they've been playing, the lack of tackling. And then just the Patriots defense, one thing they're going to do is they're going to be physical. They're going to play hard. And there's just schematically, Braves will have those guys ready to go. And then you get a bye. And then you get to reevaluate and then come back. And then after that, you have potentially a healthy Ravens defense, obviously without Nnamdi Madubuike, who was put on IR for the year. But you have a spirited Jets defense, which they've struggled. The Raiders defense is trying to figure it out. And then the 49ers defense, will see where they are. And then on the back end of that, you have Titans, Bears, Bills, Steelers, Bengals. So it'll be a little bit of a up and down, but I mean, if whoever the quarterback is, and we'll go with Dillon Gabriel now because he's just been named the starter. If he finds a rhythm in what Kevin Stefanski has been able to prove and show on offense, and they find a rhythm as an offense, these guys can go on a nice little run here because there are winnable games in this schedule.
Absolutely.
There are winnable games there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you before we get out of here, but I'll leave with this first. This offense isn't nearly as explosive, isn't the word, as deep as the 2024 Broncos offense, but I feel like we could see a Bo Nix type situation where you're just game managing from one series to the next, not asking a whole bunch of your quarterback, and just let the defense hold the other team to 15 points, and then you're going to be competitive. So you can tell me what you think about that, and then we can end on this. And I think I already know the answer based on what you just said. I was going to ask you who wins more games, the Jackson Dart Giants or the Dillon Gabriel Browns by the time it's all said and done.
That's actually a great question. I'll say this. Going back to what you were saying about, the quarterback position, it's something I used to tell Will Levis before every game, right? I used to tell him, you only have to be one of 11. You don't have to be number one. Right. And it's just allow the guys around you to do what they do. And you just do your part. You do your part. You lift the team, when those opportunities are there, but you don't have to go out and play hero ball. And that's Dillon Gabriel's style. Dillon Gabriel's going to come into this thing and be a point guard.
Yep.
And he's going to be Rajon Rondo, and he's just going to distribute the ball and, do some cool things along the way and just get the ball into the hands of the people that can make things happen. Now, who's going to win? And we've seen the Browns schedule. I'm going to go on my phone and I'm going to Google the Giants remaining schedule.
You don't want to see that thing again. It's going to scare you.
And I'm going to give you, if I could spell New York instead of New Torque. We're not even going to go there. All right, let's see. Who do they have left? Just the simple fact that you got the Eagles, you got a gauntlet of Eagles, Broncos, Eagles, Niners. Then you got to play the Packers, then the Lions, then the Patriots, then the Commanders, the Vikings, the Raiders, and Cowboys. I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns having the potential to have more wins. I beat you to it, Striker.
There you go, Striker hustling back there. I love it.
But I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns. I think they have more potential to earn some wins with a rookie quarterback because I do believe that the Cleveland Browns have more around their young quarterback than the Giants do, especially with the Giants losing Malik Neighbors. And that's no knock to Cuzzo, Darius Slayton, or Wan'Dale Robinson, or any of those guys. But I just think the Cleveland Browns have more around them.
Did we meet Darius' sister or his cousin in Colorado? She worked for DM.
It was his sister.
Okay, yeah.
So shout out to you, Malika, and the Colorado Buffs. I know you're out there doing your thing, getting those recruits all squared away.
What was the last thing I was going to say here? I can't remember what it was now. It was going to be great too. Well, we'll have to figure it out in the next.
AARP.
AARP. Yeah, I need to take my memory medication. All right, that's all we got, Striker. I know what it was. Got it just in time. Thank you, memory meds. If you had a time machine, would you go back in time, and if you're Shador, tell the Ravens to draft you, knowing now that Lamar's banged up and the backup plan is Cooper Rush?
No, because think about it. No matter if it's Shador or Cooper Rush, like it's a completely different offense that Lamar's running than versus what you're going to run.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? And to me, it's kind of like if you look at the Washington Commanders, and we've talked about, you go from Jayden Daniels to Marcus Mariota. Now, there's a difference, right, in who Jayden Daniels is and who Marcus Mariota has been. But when you talk about a skill set that is similar, they could do some of the similar things. It doesn't change the way Cliff Kingsbury calls the offense. But if you go from a Lamar Jackson to a Cooper Rush or a Shador Sanders, it completely alters the way that Todd Monken is going to call the offense, because there aren't going to be many RPO, runs or quarterback design runs. It's not going to be any of that in the offense, which those type runs and having Lamar's ability is what helps create those entry points for Derrick Henry, because you're going to have to, one of those linebackers, whoever the spy is going to have to keep his eye on Derrick Henry. And now that makes it a 6-on-6 battle from an offense and defense standpoint.
Right.
And so the key to Derrick Henry is getting him to his fifth step, right? Allowing him to get rolling, get to that fifth step so he can build that momentum. And then now you get him going downhill, good luck. But it's when you crowd the line and he can't get his feet going and his feet get choppy, then that's where he gets corralled in the backfield. And to me, it looks completely different. It's been much easier to get to his fifth step with Lamar Jackson in the backfield than it'll probably be with a Cooper Rush or a Shedeur Sanders.
That's a good point. I knew we had you on here for a reason. That's some good insights there, Ran. All right, Striker, we are done.
I'm glad you see it that way.
As your wife walks by giving you the side eye.
Like, you better come out here and throw these boxes away that are on the front porch.
All right, that's it for us with the Dillon Gabriel Emergency Podcast. We'll be back for Young Fellow Wednesday, so check on that. We'll talk about the college players. Scan that QR code if you're watching on the YouTubes to get with the first pick wherever you get your podcast, and we will see you guys in the next one.